A new noodle shop had just opened downstairs from my apartment complex. The food was not only delicious and affordable, but the owner had an insanely handsome son who made every meal even more enjoyable. So the moment the shop opened, I became a regular. And then? I ate there every day for 3 straight months. Until one day, my cousin opened a new restaurant, directly across the street from the noodle shop, and asked me to support his business. The moment I sat down, someone walked out of the shop across the street. He looked straight at me, his voice calm but piercing. So, does his shop also let customers feel up his abs? Let me back up a little. My cousin had been dating his girlfriend for years. They were about to get engaged when a fight broke out between them. After that, she refused to talk to him. Coincidentally, she happened to live in the same apartment complex as me. In an effort to win her back, he racked his brains and finally decided to open a noodle shop downstairs, hoping for more accidental run-ins. I figured it was just one of those romantic gestures couples do. Since his shop was newly opened and I was his cousin, of course I had to show some support. What I didn't expect was that he opened his shop directly across from the one I'd been frequenting for the past 3 months. So when I stepped into his store, I couldn't help but feel guilty. After all, I'd been eating at the place across the street 3 times a day for months now. The owner often gave me free side dishes and special offers. I'd basically built a deep bond with the entire staff. Switching restaurants now felt almost like betrayal. Still, I brushed the thought aside and walked into my cousin's shop. The automatic door played its cheerful welcome, and just then, my cousin came rushing out from the back, soaking wet from head to toe. It was a hot day, and he was wearing only a thin white t-shirt. Now that it was drenched, it clung to his skin, turning translucent. His abs were faintly visible beneath. He saw me and immediately waved me over. The kitchen pipe burst and I got splashed. The repair guy just fixed it. You came at the perfect time. I'll cook you a bowl of noodles, then head to your place to change clothes. Without waiting for a response, he dashed back into the kitchen. Our families were close, and we'd grown up together, so he knew my tastes by heart. He didn't even need to ask what kind of noodles I wanted. I sat down at the table, resting my chin in one hand. Out of habit, my gaze drifted toward the noodle shop across the street. I wondered if he was working today. Just then, a shadow fell over me, and a tall figure stepped through the doorway. Oliver? What are you doing here? I felt a pang of guilt the moment I saw him. After all, I'd been dining at his shop religiously, and now he'd caught me red-handed in the competition store. Awkward. His expression was unreadable. Those pitch-black eyes locked onto me with quiet intensity. My dad said you were running late today. He was worried something had happened, so he asked me to wait for you in front of the shop. He paused for a second, as if remembering something unpleasant. His brows furrowed slightly before he continued. Then I saw you sneak out of the complex like a thief and head straight into this brand new noodle shop. You didn't even glance back. He looked around the shop with his usual indifference. My dad chatted with the owner when they were doing renovations. Heard he just graduated from college. Great physique, too. I nodded. My cousin had just graduated and was a former athlete. His body really was something. But, was Oliver's focus a little too specific? Could it be, the reason he was always so aloof with me, was because he didn't even like women? A wave of despair swept over me. Before I could say anything, Oliver's tone shifted. His cold detachment gave way to something softer, more mocking, as he glanced at me and asked, "So, does this place also let customers touch abs?" Oliver, the owner's son from the shop across the street. Ridiculously handsome. But cold as ice. Even after knowing him for 3 months, I'd barely seen him crack a smile. He rarely spoke. Most of our interactions involved me eating noodles while bombarding him with cheesy pickup lines. He usually stayed silent. Sometimes, he'd sit across from me just to say, "What do I have to do to make you shut up? You're too noisy." In that way, he was a lot like my cousin. We both had a loyal dog tendency when it came to love. So I'd grin and ask, "Come on, just tell me your name." At first, I really only wanted to know his name. Then I wanted to know his height, his weight, his hobbies, and most importantly, his relationship status. When I found out he was single, I was over the moon. That discovery unleashed a tidal wave of cheesy lines. But no matter what I said, he never really responded. It was frustrating. I even considered giving up. As for the whole abs-touching thing, that was a total accident. One day, I was having lunch at his noodle shop when a pervert walked in, wearing nothing but boxer shorts. He stormed straight toward me. Before I could react, he grabbed my hand and forced it onto his belly. His massive, pregnant-looking belly. Covered in a layer of oil. Grinning obscenely, he pressed my hand harder against his stomach. "Never touched a real man before, huh? Here, let me give you a taste." And then? Oliver punched him. I kicked him a couple times too. The shop owner called the police. After they handed the pervert off to the officers, Oliver took me to wash my hands. I scrubbed with soap furiously, again and again. "This is so gross," I muttered, nearly in tears. "Do you think I need to chop this hand off?" I was on the verge of crying when Oliver, who had been silent this whole time, suddenly grabbed my wrist. He pulled up his own shirt and pressed my hand against his abs. "Still feel gross?" he asked. I shook my head like mad. How do I even describe it? Firm and soft, springy yet strong. In that moment, I completely forgot about the pervert and all my trauma. I slowly raised my other hand, eyes sparkling with anticipation. This hand, this one he hadn't grabbed yet. Oliver immediately told me to leave. Said he was afraid he might lose control and hit me for being a shameless pervert. I leaned in and smiled. "It's okay. Just don't hit me too hard." After that, he looked at me like I was a horror movie villain. In the days that followed, I continued eating at Oliver's noodle shop as usual. Maybe it was because of what had happened earlier, but the owner seemed to feel a bit guilty. He started giving me extra-large portions every time. And whenever Oliver was around, his dad would make him sit across from me to protect my safety. Eating noodles while feasting on his abs? It was a double serving. No wonder I gained 6 pounds in just 1 week. At some point, I joked that my hand hadn't been fully purified yet and asked if I could apply to touch his abs again. Oliver gave me a fake smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sure. Help yourself." How embarrassing. Hee hee. I immediately set down my chopsticks, eagerly pressed my hand against his abs, and gave them a light squeeze. He frowned, clearly a little exasperated, but he didn't push my hand away. It was like a silent agreement between us. After that, I began testing the waters more frequently. But he didn't always agree. Usually, I was only allowed to touch his abs twice a week. A small indulgence. Just enough to keep me craving more. So when I heard Oliver's latest sarcastic remark, I suddenly had an idea. I'd met my cousin's girlfriend before. She was cute, lively, and, most importantly, shared my appreciation for handsome men. But since she had a boyfriend, her appreciation was usually limited to quick glances on the street. If my cousin really wanted to win her back, wouldn't seduction be the simplest way? But I also knew him well. He was a genuinely good guy. Kind-hearted, but a total blockhead. I doubted he'd ever considered seducing his own girlfriend to cheer her up. Well, what could I do? I was his cousin. It was my duty to teach him. Seeing I hadn't replied, Oliver frowned and asked again, "What's the matter?" Hard to answer. I quickly shook my head. No. I mean, come on, do I look like that kind of? Before I could finish, my cousin emerged from the kitchen holding a steaming bowl of noodles. His previous shirt had been completely soaked, and it was hot in the kitchen, so this time, he just didn't bother putting a shirt back on. He walked out wearing nothing but a pair of oversized shorts. Everyone knows how this works. If it were a pot-bellied guy strutting around shirtless in public, people would have called him an exhibitionist. But if it's a hot guy with an 8-pack? All they'd think is, damn. What kind of blessed world is this, eating noodles with a side of eye candy? Of course, I didn't think that way. He was my cousin. Practically a brother. Besides, he already had a girlfriend. He needed to preserve his dignity as a man. So I immediately spoke up, "Put on a shirt. Don't let other people see you like this." My cousin placed the noodles in front of me, wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, and gave me a goofy grin. "It's fine. I wasn't planning to let anyone else see anyway." Then he pointed to a spot on his abs where some oil had splashed, turning the fair skin a little red. "Though, yeah, I should put on a shirt. Hot oil on bare skin really stings." I quickly handed him a tissue. Just then, I heard a quiet voice behind me. "Wow. You really care about him, huh?" Without thinking, I nodded. "Of course I do. We grew up together, after all. He was my cousin, I had to act like a responsible big sister." "Oh right, Oliver." I turned, ready to introduce him to my cousin. But before I could say anything, Oliver was already walking away, his expression frosty, without even a glance back. I didn't think much of it. He was always like that. At his noodle shop, he rarely talked to me. Sometimes, if I got too flirty, he'd just walk off mid-sentence. Cold as ice. My cousin watched him leave, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "Come on, sis. Don't tell me that guy is the frosty ice king you've been chasing for 3 whole months, and still haven't caught." I rested my chin in my hands, stars practically sparkling in my eyes. "You don't get it. He's the total package. His face? Perfect. His abs? Perfect. It's just that I couldn't help wondering, was everything else about him just as perfect? I was way too curious. After finishing my noodles, I didn't linger. I planned to head straight home. My cousin's shop didn't have a shower, so if he wanted to wash up, he had to close up and go home, which would take nearly 2 hours round trip. So he suggested dropping by my place for a quick shower. I'd already been apartment hunting and was considering renting a place in the complex myself. As he talked about that, his tone suddenly turned bashful. Just imagining living in the same building as Eva made him blush. I was speechless. They'd been dating for years. Met each other's parents. Talked about getting married. Eva had even suggested trying out cohabitation for a while. And what did my cousin say? No. I'm too shy. She was already shy enough as it was, and after being rejected, she was too embarrassed to bring it up again. No wonder his make-up plan had gone off the rails. He was completely avoiding the obvious route. I stepped out of the noodle shop while my cousin stayed behind to wash the dishes and close up. That would take at least another 10 minutes. But just as I left, I saw Oliver standing in front of his family's shop. The moment he spotted me, he strode over. You usually finish eating in about an hour. Why did it take you more than 2 today? What, he added, was the conversation that fun? I nodded. Yeah, it kind of was. I lost track of time. My cousin had spent the whole meal telling me about family gossip. Aside from ogling handsome guys, gossip was my one true passion. And since my aunt was practically a professional intelligence agent when it came to family drama, my cousin knew all the juiciest stuff. He didn't care for it himself, but he knew I did, so he shared everything while I ate. There was just so much dirt, and it was so explosive, that I ended up eating for over 2 hours. Oliver pressed his lips together, his expression unreadable. He looked like he wasn't thrilled, but that was his usual face. Hard to say if anything was different. Then he asked, so, are you going back to his place for dinner tonight, too? I nodded again. What could I do? We hadn't even finished the story arcs. My cousin had even left me with a cliffhanger just to lure me back. So yes. I had to go back for dinner. Oliver's expression turned even colder. I figured Oliver was just afraid of losing me as a high-quality customer. So I patted my chest and promised him earnestly, don't worry. Your dad's noodle shop is still my top pick, delicious and affordable. I only came here for a change of pace. A change of pace? Oliver suddenly cut in, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Is it the noodles that are new? Or the person? I didn't really get what he meant. Just as I was about to ask, Oliver struck again. So, how are his abs? Fun to touch? I shrugged. They're fine, I guess. We used to fight a lot as kids. I wasn't as strong as him, so I always went for the dirty tricks, like scratching and pinching. I've grabbed his abs a few times. The texture's not bad. But then I remembered, I was supposed to be pursuing Oliver. So I quickly added, but don't worry, his abs aren't nearly as nice to touch as yours. Oliver curved his lips. Wow. You really took the time to compare. Of course. I thumped my chest again, then glanced at our apartment building, starting to test the waters. My uncle's shop was pretty slow today, and your dad seems to be managing fine alone. Do you want to come to my place and watch a movie? I just found a super good horror flick. I've always been bold, especially with horror movies. Most of my friends would scream and cry while watching with me, but I never flinched. If I watched one with Oliver, he'd definitely get scared and dive into my arms. And then, he. Wipe that drool off your face. Oliver's sudden voice yanked me out of my daydream. I blinked at him and asked again, unwilling to give up, you really don't want to come? It's seriously a good movie. He shook his head, still wearing that cold expression. No. And just like that, he turned around and walked back toward his shop, without the slightest bit of hesitation. Meanwhile, my dumb cousin had finished closing up and was jogging toward me. Watching a horror movie? Let's go. I'll come watch with you. But I gotta shower at your place first. As soon as he said that, I caught, just for a moment, Oliver's footsteps faltering in the distance. I didn't notice it then. I simply nodded and told my cousin, sure. I've got snacks and beer at home. We can eat while we watch. The moment the words left my mouth, Oliver, who had clearly been walking away, suddenly turned and marched back over. His mouth pressed in a thin line. That same frosty face. You're letting him come to your place to watch a horror movie? And drink beer with him? It was just a little habit of mine. Watching horror movies alone was kind of boring. And since I didn't get drunk from beer, it made everything more relaxing and fun. So I nodded again. Yeah. What's the problem? I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but Oliver's face seemed to turn even colder after hearing that. Before I could take a closer look, he simply muttered, suit yourself. Then walked off without another word. He was walking too fast. I almost ran after him, but stopped myself. I didn't want to seem too clingy and scare him away. Everyone online says, chase, but don't cling. So I resisted the urge and turned to my cousin. Let's head up, I said. Time to watch our movie. He planned to shower first. Carrying his change of clothes, he went into the guest bathroom, while I set up snacks and beer in the living room and started scrolling for the perfect horror movie. Before I could find one, the doorbell rang. I went to open it. And there stood Oliver at my door, holding a steaming bowl of noodles. "This is a new dish my dad just came up with. He said you're a loyal customer and insisted you be the first to try it." He frowned, sounding reluctant. "I didn't want to come. He made me." Oliver's dad had always been sweet to me. Every time he created a new recipe, he'd make sure I was the first to try it. So this wasn't unusual. I happily accepted the bowl, then couldn't resist asking again, "Wanna stay and watch the horror movie?" Predictably, he refused. Without hesitation. He even turned around to leave. But something made him stop. He glanced back. I heard the sound of running water. "Chris is showering," I said, pointing toward the guest bathroom. Oliver's frown deepened. "Emma Forrest, are you really sure about this?" "Huh? Sure about what?" I had no idea what he was talking about. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, like he was trying hard to stay calm. "You really plan to watch a horror movie with him? In your house?" "Well, yeah," I shrugged. "You wouldn't come." I spread my hands dramatically, feigning regret. Just then, Chris walked out of the bathroom. He was wearing a plain white t-shirt and baggy shorts, looking totally relaxed. He strolled into the living room, popped open a beer, and chugged half the bottle in one go. Hearing the movement, he turned toward the door. "Oh hey, I know you. You're the son of the noodle shop owner across the street, right? Oliver." Oliver gave a flat hum. "And you're Chris." "I know." Chris didn't say anything more to him. He just waved at me and called, "Emma Forrest, get over here. The movie's starting." Oliver didn't give me a chance to respond. He turned and walked away again. I sighed. Such a golden opportunity, wasted. If only I could have gotten him to stay. Watch a movie. Drink a little. Maybe, he. I would have seen more of that perfect package. "Could you stop drooling already?" Chris's voice broke through my daydream, annoying me. I picked up a slipper and smacked it against his head. "Ow. What the hell, Emma? Why are you so violent?" Whenever he needed something, it was sis. Whenever he didn't, it was just Emma. If I'd known this, I would have beaten him more when we were kids. Then he added, "You're a girl living alone. How can you go around telling other men your apartment number? What if they had bad intentions?" I gave him a fake smile, flopping down on the couch. Well, I'd honestly welcome that. I'd hinted so many times, and he never came. I even promised we'd just watch horror movies and I wouldn't touch him, yet he still didn't believe me. What, do I look like someone who doesn't keep her word? Okay, fine. Maybe I do. The next second, I saw the terrified look on my cousin's face. Before my cousin could even speak, the doorbell rang again. This time, he scrambled up and practically rolled to the door. "Oliver? You again?" I looked over, and sure enough, Oliver stood at the door with yet another bowl of noodles in his hand. There were beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. Though honestly, the weather wasn't even that hot. "Must be excess young energy?" Oliver spoke in his usual flat tone. "This is the second new dish my dad developed. He wanted me to bring it to you as well." I quickly thanked him, though I hesitated. There's no way I could finish it all by myself. His dad was just too enthusiastic. I mean, I was a foodie, but I'd already had lunch. How was I supposed to eat 2 more bowls of noodles? But of course, my idiot cousin didn't feel even the slightest bit awkward. He took the bag straight from Oliver's hand with a grin so wide it practically split his face. "No worries. If you can't finish it, I'll eat it. I'm not picky." I don't know why, but a sudden chill swept over me. I looked up at Oliver. Nothing seemed unusual. He just cast a calm glance my way, then turned without a word and walked off. Chris sat back down on the sofa, noodles in hand. He opened both bowls and gave them a taste. The flavor wasn't all that different, one was a little spicier, the other more mild. Just as I was about to continue watching the horror movie with him, the doorbell rang. Again. Chris and I exchanged a look, then walked to the door together. As expected, it was Oliver. Still holding a bowl of noodles. "This is my dad's. The third new recipe he came up with?" I finished the sentence for him. Oliver gave a quiet and handed me the noodles. As I took it, I couldn't help watching the sweat drip down his forehead, trailing over his jawline, sliding down his throat, finally disappearing beneath the collar of his shirt. I gulped. And, unable to help myself, I asked again with a hopeful smile, "Look, it's just the two of us. We can't possibly finish 3 bowls. Why don't you stay and help us watch the movie? I mean, help us eat the noodles?" I fully expected another rejection, if not instantly, then at least after a pause. But Oliver just thought for a second, then walked right in. "All right," he said. "Since this is one of my dad's carefully crafted recipes, I can't let it go to waste." He said yes. He was going to watch a horror movie with me. In that moment, I couldn't help thinking, Chris is so in the way. Originally, I was sitting next to my cousin, and there was still an empty space beside him. Not that I was being shy or anything. I wanted Oliver to sit next to me. Heck, I wanted him to sit on me. But I didn't want to scare him off. So I had to play it slow. I didn't expect Oliver to silently walk right up to us, wedge himself into that tiny space between me and Chris, and sit down. Close. Really close. I could feel the faint pulse of the veins in his arm. I tried to suppress the inner screaming. I didn't want to scare him with how excited I was. I took a deep breath and clicked play on the horror movie. I picked something really intense. Just a few minutes in, Chris was already screaming his head off, so scared he nearly threw himself into Oliver's arms. That was when I realized I'd messed up. I should have pretended to be scared first. Should have jumped into Oliver's arms before Chris could even think about it. But Oliver didn't seem like he liked being touched. The moment Chris leaned on him, he inched away, toward me, his eyes full of disgust. Chris might have been slow, but even he could read the room. Realizing he was unwelcome, he stood up, grabbed the AC blanket, and moved to the other side of me. No sooner had he sat down than a terrifying ghost face filled the screen. Chris shrieked and clung to my arm like a lifeline, eyes squeezed shut. I knew he was terrified but still made the effort to join me, so I gently patted his arm, like I used to when we were kids. What I didn't notice was the complicated expression on Oliver's face beside me. After a while, just as I was calming Chris down, I felt someone tug at my arm. I turned and saw Oliver's face, completely blank. "Emma," he said, "I'm scared too." Okay. He was definitely testing me. I'd read online that guys liked girls who were modest and a little reserved. I'd been way too aggressive before, always clinging to him. This had to be a test to see if I'd changed. So I paused for a second, then decisively yanked the AC blanket off Chris and tossed it at Oliver. With Chris screaming in the background, I gave Oliver my sweetest smile. "If you're scared, just wrap yourself in the blanket." I actually wanted to say more. But Chris was still shaking beside me, gripping my arm like a teddy bear, nearly in tears. What could I do? I had to comfort him. I was the one who stole his blanket to flirt with a hot guy. Barely a few lines into soothing him, Oliver stood up abruptly. "I have things to take care of at home. I'm leaving." He took a couple steps, then seemed to think of something. He turned back, grabbed Chris by the arm, and started dragging him toward the door. "Chris. My dad wants to talk to you about his secret recipe. Come to the shop with me." Chris, being utterly terrified, didn't even question it. He nodded frantically and ran ahead of Oliver, eager to escape the movie. Sigh. So cowardly. Later, Chris told me that once they left the complex, Oliver said something had come up and told him to come back another time. Chris had been too scared to return to my place, so he figured he might as well reopen the shop. But the whole reason he opened it in the first place was to win back his girlfriend. He hadn't forgotten that mission. The next day, he texted me to say he was ready. "You and Eva are close. Just come up with an excuse to get her downstairs. I'll wait outside with the flowers." Looking at the message, and the 888 yuan red packet labeled mission fee, I didn't hesitate for a second. I headed straight to the 7th floor to find Eva. Eva was a genuinely great girl. We'd had heart-to-hearts before. I knew what was on her mind. She wasn't mad at Chris because of something major. She just thought he was too dense. They were practically already engaged, and yet he still didn't get any of her signals. She'd even begun to worry, maybe he had some sort of hidden issue. "Sis, it's not like I don't love him. I just wish he'd be honest with me. If there's something wrong, I'll go with him to the doctor, whatever it takes." Eva sighed, then stomped her foot in frustration. "That idiot Chris. I tried touching his abs last time and he blushed like a tomato. Kept saying it was inappropriate. Like, what? I'm not even allowed to touch my own boyfriend's abs. If he doesn't step it up this time," she added, "I'm not forgiving him." I wholeheartedly agreed. I even planned to have a serious talk with my cousin afterward. He wasn't stupid. At least, I hope not. Just as we were about to head downstairs together, Eva suddenly slapped her forehead. "Crap, I forgot my phone. Wait for me at the entrance, okay?" Before I could respond, she'd already jumped into the elevator. I wasn't in a rush anyway. I knew they'd patch things up eventually. So I stepped outside and saw Chris waiting near the building entrance, holding a bouquet of tulips, Eva's favorite flower. "Hey, sis, where's baby Eva?" My cousin often called her Eva, or baby Eva, just like her family did. "She forgot her phone," I replied after a pause, deciding to help the big dummy out a little. "Listen, she's not actually mad at you. But if you still can't understand what she's trying to say, then you're doomed. Sometimes, with some things, do we really have to be that reserved?" He nodded, half understanding, then declared solemnly, "Then I'll do whatever baby Eva says." Just as those words left his mouth, I spotted Oliver walking over from a distance, his usual cold expression firmly in place as he headed straight for Chris. Baby Emma, baby Emma. Chris's brows furrowed, visibly annoyed. Who said you could call her that? Only I can call her that. He shot me a glare. I'd known him since we were kids, that was definitely jealousy. Okay, I quickly soothed him. Only you can call me that. Finally satisfied, he hugged the bouquet of tulips in his arms and beamed. I'll wait until no one's around to give these to baby Eva. What? Oliver said, his voice cutting through the air like ice. Am I getting in the way of your big moment? He looked at me then, his gaze unreadable. Chris, ever blunt, nodded. Of course. You shouldn't be here right now. Don't tell me you've got feelings for my baby Eva. Oliver didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his gaze to the tulips in Chris's arms. Then he looked at me. You know tulips are poisonous, right? I nodded. So don't buy them too often, he said softly. And don't accept them too often either. What was that supposed to mean? It's not like I had a boyfriend. Who was giving me flowers? And even if someone did, what, a couple tulips in open air were gonna poison me? But Chris had gone quiet, frowning in thought. Tulips were poisonous, maybe they weren't good for Eva's health. If only there were another way to cheer her up. Finally. He was starting to get it. Sometimes, cheering up a girl doesn't need fancy stuff, I said. He perked up. What do you mean? I pointed straight at his abs. Let her touch your abs. She might be happy again. He hesitated. That's it? I nodded enthusiastically. Totally. Abs are magical. No girl can resist them. I couldn't either. It's just that Oliver was too stingy, only letting me touch his twice a week. As that thought passed through my head, Oliver suddenly spoke. Emma. My dad wants to know if you're coming to the shop this afternoon. He made noodles especially for you, extra eggs and a drumstick. I'm coming. We're going right now. I grabbed Oliver by the arm and marched toward the complex gate. He didn't resist, just followed along obediently. As for my idiot cousin? Well, if he couldn't figure things out after everything I just said, then he deserved to stay single forever. At the shop, Oliver's dad greeted me warmly and hurried into the kitchen to make my noodles. Oliver sat across from me, same as always. He picked up a book and started reading like I didn't even exist. Sometimes, I couldn't help but feel a little defeated. How could a book have more allure than me? Thankfully, Oliver's dad worked fast. Before I could wallow for long, a steaming bowl of noodles appeared in front of me. No wonder I'd eaten here for 3 months straight without getting bored. It was really good. I buried my face in the bowl and devoured several mouthfuls, totally missing the moment Oliver put his book down and began staring at me with a complicated expression. Emma. What? Was he not used to me staying quiet for once? Maybe he missed my chatter? God, what a delusional thought. I got a little too excited. He tapped the table. I looked up, reluctantly tearing myself away from the bowl. He was staring straight at me, eyes serious. Do you think Chris will succeed? Huh? You mean, winning back his girlfriend? I nodded without hesitation. Oliver lowered his eyes. His voice grew quieter, harder to read. You're that sure? I set my chopsticks down and began analyzing it seriously. Chris has the face, you've seen it, right? Total hottie. Plus he's an athlete. That body? Chef's kiss. I swear, let Eva touch his abs and everything will be fine. I mean, I added, Eva and I are both shameless pervs. Oliver looked thoughtful. So, all it takes is letting her touch his abs? Exactly. In fact, if Oliver would let me touch his abs 10 times a day and that meant I'd win him over, I'd be willing to touch them 100 times. I was still dreaming about that when Oliver suddenly stood up, walked around the table, lifted his shirt, and grabbed my left hand, placing it right on his abs. Oh my God. It had been a week since I last felt that texture. The sensation, firm yet warm, sent a rush through me. I couldn't help but give it a little squeeze. So soft. So powerful. God, I was in love. If only he'd let me nibble on it a little too. Before I could spiral further, Oliver asked, what if someone else lets her touch their abs too? Would that make it harder for Chris to succeed? I was confident in my cousin. Still stroking his abs, I replied seriously, nope. Chris will definitely win her back. They're already so close. The abs are just an appetizer. Once they get emotional again, all those misunderstandings will disappear. Eva's only worried Chris has some kind of issue. As long as that's not the problem, they'll be married in no time. So yeah, Chris will definitely succeed. No sooner had the words left my mouth than Oliver abruptly yanked my hand away. Yep. He yanked it. My precious touching session was over far too soon. If only I could have another round, I sighed, mournfully picked up my chopsticks, and consoled myself with a few more bites of noodles. To be fair, Oliver's dad had gotten even better at cooking lately. The noodles were so good, I forgot all about being sad. I was enjoying myself too much to notice what Oliver mumbled next. He asked, "Does it have to be like this?" I nodded absent-mindedly. He let out a quiet scoff and said nothing more. I slurped down the rest of my noodles. As much as I wanted to stay and admire the handsome man across from me, I couldn't ignore my cousin's love life. If he really screwed this up, my aunt might cry hard enough to bring our house down. So after paying, I got up and prepared to leave. But just as I reached the door, Oliver chased after me. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path with a rare, serious expression. "Wait for me." Wait for what? I didn't get it. Still, I smiled and nodded. Sure. Then walked away, one step, turned back. Another step, turned back again. And again. And again. Turns out, my cousin wasn't hopeless after all. That very day, he went full throttle, no brakes. Whatever misunderstanding they had, it was gone. The happy couple immediately began planning their wedding. When I went to the noodle shop to see him, I found him sitting there grinning like an idiot, completely love-struck, as if he hadn't already been in a relationship for years. Pathetic. Oliver seemed free that day too. He was casually walking around near the complex, and somehow ended up outside my cousin's noodle shop. At that moment, Chris was speaking to me. "I think baby Eva and I are finally going to make it official." I had just opened my mouth to congratulate him when Oliver stepped in with a frown. "Make what official?" Chris was so blissfully in love, he smiled at everyone now, even Oliver. "Obviously, I mean me and my baby Eva," he beamed. Then, bashful all of a sudden, he covered his face with both hands and buried it on the table, giggling like a lovesick fool. Absolutely unbearable. Oliver didn't react. He just said plainly, "Until you're married, nothing's certain. Anything can happen. What if she meets someone better and dumps you?" Boom. That was a direct hit. Chris jumped up immediately, hands on his hips like a righteous hero. "Oliver. What kind of crap are you spouting? What do you mean someone better? I'm more than good enough, okay? Baby Eva said so herself." Oh God. Men in love are hard to watch. I covered my face in secondhand embarrassment and looked away, so I didn't see the wounded look on Oliver's face. When I looked up again, he was gone. That night, Chris closed his shop early. He couldn't wait to go celebrate his fresh romance. So I did what I always did, I went to Oliver's dad's noodle shop. But Oliver wasn't there. Without him, I didn't dawdle. I ate my noodles at a normal pace and prepared to head home. Just as I stepped out, a voice called from behind me. "Emma. It's getting dark. My dad asked me to walk you home." Oh my God. Best father-in-law ever. I nodded eagerly and walked beside him. We'd taken this path 100 times before, but for some reason, this time felt different. Like there were pink bubbles floating in the air. Of course, Oliver was still Oliver, quiet and distant the entire way. Not a word, until we reached my apartment door. I thought he'd leave. But instead, he said, "Since I'm already here, wanna watch a horror movie?" Yes. I immediately went looking for one, while he sat quietly on the sofa, lost in thought. "What's wrong?" I asked. He frowned, serious. "Aren't you going to pour us some drinks?" How could I not? Without hesitation, I ran to the kitchen and grabbed both beer and hard liquor. I was worried he might get mad, but he just gave the bottles a glance and gestured for me to pour. I didn't dare pour too much. What if he had a low tolerance and passed out after one drink? We had to pace this properly. Then came my Oscar-worthy performance. As soon as the horror movie started, I started shrieking. Ow. Eek. And then, accidentally fell into his arms. I don't know why, but this one's extra scary today. I couldn't help it, I just had to snuggle up to you. You're not mad, right? God. Curled up in Oliver's arms, my right hand found its way to his abs. Soft, warm, firm, pure heaven. I didn't dare go too far. Just a little squeeze here, a gentle stroke there. He didn't stop me. Emboldened, I wrapped myself fully into his chest. Maybe it was the alcohol talking, but I wanted to go even further. I looked up. He must have heard me shift, because he looked down. Since I was already in his arms, that put our lips barely 5 centimeters apart. If I just leaned forward a little, I don't even remember who moved first, me or him. But let's be honest, cold and distant Oliver? There's no way he initiated. I must have been the one, drunk off cheap beer and high hopes, who kissed him first. What did it feel like? Fireworks. Thunder. The heavens and the earth colliding. From kissing, we were rolling. From rolling, we were undressing. From undressing, well, you get the idea. It was nothing like the novels described. For starters, it didn't hurt. There was no blood. Maybe I was just built different. But I wasn't thinking anymore. All I knew was, it was amazing. And yes, he really was perfect everywhere. After a night of utter chaos, I woke up planning my next move. Step 1, play innocent. Step 2, act wronged. Step 3, cry and threaten to make him take responsibility. There's no way I'd settle for just 3 rounds. Not when it was that good. But before I could start my act, Oliver spoke first. You need to take responsibility. Huh? Responsibility? I stared at the ceiling in disbelief. Was this a dream? Did I somehow land a cosmic jackpot? I was tempted to call my grandparents and ask if smoke was rising from our ancestral graves. But in that moment, I did the only thing I could. I nodded solemnly. Don't worry. I'll take full responsibility. He smiled, the corners of his lips curling ever so slightly. He was about to reach out and pull me into a hug, when he seemed to remember something. Emma, about Chris Adams, he said. Are you still planning to go through with it? Go through with what? Oh, right. I was supposed to help Chris propose to Eva today. The decorations downstairs were probably already set up, and I'd completely forgotten. So I shot up in bed, scrambling to get dressed. What's going on? Oliver asked, still sitting on the bed. As I pulled on my clothes, I replied, Chris is proposing downstairs today. I totally forgot, I have to get there, now. Before I could finish, Oliver swung his legs off the bed, stood up, and grabbed my wrist. His face was tense, his voice low. You just slept with me, and now you're going to see Chris? I blinked. What does one thing have to do with the other? You really think they're not related? He let out a short, bitter laugh. It didn't reach his eyes. In fact, it was kind of terrifying. But I still nodded firmly. They're not. What happened between us is our business. What's happening with him today has nothing to do with it. Oliver suddenly let go of my hand. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes dark. Emma, good for you. Then he turned around and left. I stood there, stunned. And then I screamed internally toward the ceiling. WTF? Scumbag. He slept with me and ran? Wah, I wasn't done sleeping yet, the heavens clearly weren't on my side. And Chris's endless spam of calls left me no choice but to shove the Oliver drama aside and go help him with his proposal. I got dressed, headed downstairs, and texted Eva according to our plan. I told her I wanted to go shopping, and maybe help a friend catch a cheating partner. You know the drill. When you're hunting down a mistress, even as a bystander, you need to show up fully glammed. So, of course, I told her to do full makeup. The most flawless kind. Once that was settled, I walked downstairs. The whole courtyard was already decked out, pink bubbles everywhere. There was still some time before the proposal started, and I had to guide Eva to the right spot, so I started walking the route and rehearsing the plan. Suddenly, a large hand yanked me behind a tree. What the? Oliver? Yup. It was him. I froze. He held onto my wrist tightly, his eyes full of emotion I couldn't quite place. Don't go, he whispered. Please. I shook my head. This is really important today. I have to be there. He lowered his gaze, his grip tightening around my hand. Fine. I can accept you wanting both, but I have to be the main one. The marriage license can only have my name on it. I blinked. The marriage certificate would obviously only have his name. I'd love that. Wait. Main one? Does that mean there's a side one? I didn't answer right away, and Oliver suddenly pulled me into his arms. He sounded aggrieved. You're the one who started this. You kept pestering me, asking my name, my birthday, all my hobbies? And those cheesy pickup lines? They were so bad. Hey, I was inexperienced. I'd done my research online and clearly fallen into some major clickbait traps. But still, even though they were lame, they made my heart race. I'd get so flustered, I couldn't even look at you. I was scared you'd see how red my face got just from being around you. So, he'd liked me from the start? The day you almost got hurt, I was furious. And scared. That's when I realized, I really liked you. But you heartless girl, I was worried if I gave in too easily, you wouldn't cherish it. So I limited you to only 2 touches per week. That's premium access, you know. Most people would kill for that. True. Most people get free pickles with their noodles. Me? I got abs. I admit, when Chris Adams came around, I got nervous. Sure, he's got abs too. But mine are better. And I've got other skills, I promise, I'll outshine him. Why are you two comparing like this? So Emma, can you please not accept his proposal today? Even if you're going to say yes to someone, say yes to me first. Let him be the side one. Oliver looked more and more pitiful as he spoke. This was the first time he'd ever liked someone, and she turned out to be a player? He was on the verge of tears. But he held it in. He didn't want to seem less manly than Chris in front of me. Listening to all this, I suddenly realized something. Just as I was about to explain, a roar of cheers erupted from the proposal site. Oliver and I turned at the same time and saw Chris and Eva, locked in a kiss. Oliver's eyes widened in disbelief. I couldn't help but laugh. Then I turned to him and said, Oliver, have you ever considered the possibility that Chris is actually my cousin? You know, blood-related? So, that proposal? Was to someone else. Who else would it be? I rose on my tiptoes and kissed him gently. Because the only one I like, is you. From the moment we met. Love at first sight. And never once did that change.